Happy New Year's. It is 2024. To be completely honest, I am not like a hoorah New Year's person. I was just talking to my friend about this, and I sent a text. She's like one of those people that's not really big on Christmas, generally. And I just realized that I'm not big on New Year's because I see merit in having these lights are all messed up, having a marker in time to measure against. But I was thinking last night, you know, I don't need human motivation to enable me to do the things I do, really. I don't like that. There's something about the hierarchical transference of that, I don't know, psychological energy, I guess you could say. I don't want to sound woo woo or anything, but I don't really mean the energy of it. I mean the positioning in which you see yourself and how you relate to your own work and how you're relating the energy to do the work and the purpose of doing the work. And when you get that from another human being on a stage, it seems to be more fickle, I believe, than what we're going to talk about today, about when it comes from a different source, right? That's why discipline is so much greater than motivation, because discipline is persistent. It's courageous. Motivation is fickle. Nevertheless, it is good to have a marker in the year to like compare against, certain years. So that's sick. 2024. It's all good. Today we're going to be in Genesis 14. There is a person in here. Shreese, is that you? Genesis 14. This is when Abram is like, or Vaporum, I suppose could be. Anybody, I don't know who it is. But this is when Abram, we were telling the story of Abraham, reading the story of Abraham, and God called him to depart, leave his homeland, go to a place where God will show him. And Abram and Lot just split up because God's blessing Abram so much that the blessing runoff is starting to fall onto his friends. You have arrived. It's good. Falls onto his friends. Thank you for coming. You didn't get caught up in the New Year's stuff. I was surprised. I seen that text from Tamika this morning at like 6:30. I was like, she's probably thinking the same thing. Imagine. Anyway, so Abram was blessed so much that his runoff goes on to his friends, and his friends' resources back in this day, their resources were like people, cattle, and that sort of thing. So that takes up space, like physical real estate. And there was contention growing between Abram's men and Lot's men. And Abram's like, this is stupid. So let's just split up. It'll be better for us, right? Which, that makes sense. Let's say if you have, and I'm not saying Lot was a leader, which actually, now that I think about it, he had to be in some sense if he had his own men and whatnot, right? He just might not have been a leader on Lot's or on Abram's standard. And I would say that's because Abram was called by God. And Lot kind of seems to be inadvertently drug along or called by proxy from Abram, right? So he's probably doesn't really, what I'm saying is there's two leaders within a small space. And so rather than causing contention, they Abram's like, let's separate. So they separate. And I guess I'll just pick up at chapter 13, which is the chapter where it describes them separating. I'll do Genesis 13, verse 14. The Lord said to Abram, I always say Abraham. The Lord, oh, is my mic okay? Sheree says I was asleep by 12:10. I sent my text before midnight. PSS. PS, you didn't text back. Yeah, I was done. I don't know what time I fell asleep. I just was. I don't know. It was pretty late, but I wasn't like checking my phone or anything either. My bad on the text. I just what was I doing? Probably watching like sci-fi stuff. So Genesis chapter 13, verse 14. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, lift up your eyes from where you are and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram moved his tents and went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord. I think it's important to indicate that Abram stopped to build another altar. And earlier in the story, you'll see that Abram, well, in a previous episode, I was talking about how it's important that the story took a time. They took time in the story to write that Abram stopped to build an altar to God. It's important. It's like it's a point and a marker that you go to, a place that has the purpose of worshiping God. Now, if you were super caught up in the work that you were called to do, you can forget where, just like my contempt for the motivation from New Year's, you can forget where your motivation comes from, right? And you can start idolizing the work that you do over the source, or you can start idolizing your skills you develop after you're called to do what you do. So it's good that Abram went back to his altar, worshiped God. Like in the story, it says he stopped, built an altar, worshiped God, went on his way, did some stuff, and then he went back to his altar, worshiped God again. And yeah, that's important because if you source things from things of this world, it's finite. Whereas sourcing it to the Spirit of God that is transcendent, the spirit of being which structures everything in your life, that calls you forth to the land that the Spirit will show you. It's like that understanding is greater than anything here on earth. So things here on earth can contend with it in your head, but not in a real sense, metaphorically, right? Or spiritually, psychologically, it's not the same. And that's, I think, where the root of that phrase where God gives you a peace that is not of this world, therefore, like the world can't take it away, which is true because of that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, say, motivation you gain from some great speaker at New Year's, it is given by a man, therefore it can be taken by a man. And I know that's kind of loaded because God can speak through people. So that's not like a blanket statement, but you'll never get me to say that something that you directly yourself read from the Bible and hear from God, and that could be from a person, so maybe my perception is wrong there. But there's a difference between you getting all revved up about someone telling you to do something because they say it'll be good for you, and when you really know it's God, like your spirit, right? There's a difference. And sometimes you don't find out the difference till what the title of this video is developing the courage and endurance to finish your purpose. That's right. And that's and why I put courage and endurance. I should have maybe cited discipline, but it takes endurance to finish the race. You should never, it's like if you're afraid of something, in behavioral psychology, there's exposure therapy. They don't the, at the start of the therapy, they'll like expose you to something that's very minor so you can handle it, but they'll keep increasing the exposure. They won't shrink, they won't take it away, right? They don't not expose you to it. Your your courage grows. It's not like your fear shrinks, your courage grows. Like you stay afraid. It's just like um in like the pickup artist game or whatever. Guys, they always say that it's nerve-wracking approaching women. And yeah, Cherie says lots of endurance is necessary. Absolutely. Because the greater your calling, the more endurance you're going to need in order to finish it. The more obstacles you're going to have to traverse, whether actually out in the world or in yourself. And I think, well, I know that just as an exposure therapy in the behavioral psychological world, behavioral psychology, it's like your courage needs to grow and it'll grow in proportion to what you expose yourself to. So in your journey, like your calling, your purpose, you'll start to hit certain obstacles and difficulties and challenges in your belief, in your skills, and what God is saying about you will start to ring truer than it was prior. And you'll start developing this psychological, mm, it would be proof of work in your head. And you can start remembering it. Be like, I've done this before, maybe just a little bit more. And you'll just get exposed to like greater and greater things and it'll increase your courage. And that's really important. I don't think, I don't know. There's been times where I've been really excited to do something and then I go to do it and it's just like, this sucks. And I don't want to break through the wall initially. Or sometimes I just get so scared to begin with. So I just stop. And I don't know if scared is the right word for me particularly, but I know other people do very much so. There are some things. Yes, there is stuff that I get scared of. And so I'll stop. And it takes endurance to not only to build the courage to do things, but it takes endurance for those times that you fail. Like when you're in that process of building your courage up to be who God's called you to be, the greater spirit, right? It's like when the spirit calls you forth, you realize the person I am now is not congruent to the person that's going to accomplish that. But somewhere along this adventure, we're going to develop into that person. And so your courage grows as you encounter obstacles and like monsters in the dark, right? Or monsters in yourself from your past. And it takes endurance because you're going to fail sometimes. You're going to hit setbacks. And it takes endurance to be able to pick yourself back up and keep going. I think, yeah, that's something I don't really hear about a lot. People always talk about finishing the race. But I think the most tiring part of doing all this stuff. It's happened to pick myself up off the ground from falling. Yeah, they're in the monsters are in the light too. Hey, good morning, Zephyr. How late are you? I've only been going 15 minutes, which is actually something I wanted to ask. And this is for anyone. I got like, I don't know, 3 to 5 people that come here, which I'm very grateful for. So I've realized that this thing runs longer than an hour usually if it's good. And when I have days when I have that 9 a.m. meeting as a software developer, I have enough, what would I say, good standing at my company where I could, let's say, the person that trained me, that left the company before me, she never even attended the 9 a.m. meetings, okay? And I could say that's maybe a possibility for me, but I don't want to do that. The person that I replaced, her schedule was so crazy that she would work from like literally like 11 a.m. to like 1 and then do whatever and then get back on at like midnight and work till like 5 a.m. and then take a nap. She was all over the place. She's amazing. Her name is Shelly. She was super smart. And so, and people have said that I remind them of her in regards to my schedule because I'm just like online all the time, which is because of this or that. But I just want to know if there's a certain time. I may reduce the times I come on here. I still want to come on here every day, like, but I don't want to rush myself off before 9 a.m. I'm gonna have to structure that in a manner. So let me know. What do you guys think? It is this crazy schedule. Like, I don't like cutting myself off before 9 because it's 8:46 now. I'm thinking about going Mondays and then what up, Carlos? I don't know if you've ever been in here before. I love you, man. So I don't know if I don't know why it's so important, but I feel like every day is important. The reason I want to do this every day is because no one's doing this every day. No one's doing this. No one's having intellectual conversations every day. No one's doing this that I know of. No one's pressing their brain in this manner and like inviting people in to actually like input their opinion, which is how this will survive. If people come in here and actually organically manifest something greater, like an understanding in which we can all use to interface with the world better. By and the main text we're going to be looking at is this textbook, which, whether you believe in the spiritual side of it or not, is coming from this spirit that calls you from the abyss into the world, right? And it's the antithesis to what we see every day in the world. And the fact that you see characters in here fall all the time, not only from pure happenstance, but from things that they cause themselves. And the Spirit of God, He forgives them and He has compassion, but He also has wrath. And it covers like the full spectrum of life, right? So even if you don't believe in God in a literal sense, as in, well, that's a loaded statement because you could believe in the idea of God, but not believe that if you believe this text to be true as it's written, like it took place, that's the best way to put it. Even if you don't believe that, it can still have great use for your life, right? So I need to know, I don't know, if you guys have an idea of what time works best for you all. Because I don't want to cut myself off short here, but I also don't want to not go every day. So any input would be fantastic. But as I was saying, Carlos, I don't know what I'm have team day off, sick. I don't know what New Year's thing you were going into, but I was just talking about how it's important to develop courage and endurance. And I'd love to get your take on this because you're a super smart dude. You're actually so I'm part of this like Daniel's Den group, which is like the self-development group, um, which is ran by this pastor Darius Daniels out of this church out of Atlanta called Change Church, which is amazing. And Carlos is one of the I would say I'm really picky when it comes to people. And I think he has one of the greatest leadership characteristics in the whole group. And it's like a group of like 500 people. And it's pretty good. And I'm not saying my judgment means more than others in regards to accuracy. But I would say that he's different. So I'm excited that he's in here. And something I was talking about, Carlos, before he came is New Year's Eve, like there's a lot of motivation that comes with it. And I was talking about how behavioral psychology, just psychology period. Usually when you have a client, you don't really take away the thing that they're afraid of. You just expose them to it. And in the beginning, you expose them in a very minor way. And this increases your courage, which, allows you to like kind of put on this like sheen of armor. That stuff will just kind of fly off you when it hits you, rather than shrinking away from the things you're afraid of. And that's what's most important when it comes to like traversing your journey, when it comes to transforming your character into who it is going to be to accomplish your purpose in the end, rather than attaining. And that's more substantial, that and discipline and having the endurance to pick yourself back up during the times that your courage fails, because it will sometimes. Those are the most important things, I believe. Well, God, of course, but those qualities, building that, and those are all kind of powered by faith, which is outside of our understanding and world. That's the most important thing, I believe, rather than getting your motivation from another person or from a certain event of the year, because I think you set yourself up for failure doing that. I do. Because you can look back and we aren't stupid. We remember last year when we got all motivated about something. And it's really easy to think, I felt this last year. And this last year might not have looked like what I thought it was going to look like. Yeah, exactly. Motivation is based on feelings and it can't be trusted. Absolutely. I totally agree. So I guess I'm going to actually start reading. We're like 20 minutes in. Chapter 14, after Abram and Lot separate, it says, it's titled Abram Rescues Lot. So at this time, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemaber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim. For 12 years they had been subject to Kedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Kedor, how is that? It's Kedorlaomer. Kedor, I'm just going to put Kedorlaomer. And the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephites in Ashtaroth, in Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, the Emites in Shava Kurathim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran near the desert. Then they turned back and went to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, the king of Bela, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against the Kedorlaomer thing. King of Elam, Tidal, king of Goim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits. When the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then went away. They went away. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since his was living in Sodom. So you got these kings that fought, and then it was 4 verse 5, and then four kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. So this is after Abram and Lot separate, which as a leader, Abram was the one that posed that idea to Lot, right? So you have to remember that. So continue on, chapter 14, verse 13. One who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Now Abram was living near the great trees in Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol, and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the good and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and other people. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer, and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in Valley of Shaveh. The Melchizedek, Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. That's important. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and have taken an oath that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the thong of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me, to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. So here it's interesting that Abram posed to Lot, hey, we need to separate. And I wonder if Abram, after he heard that Lot was taken by these kings, he probably thinks in his head, Lot probably wouldn't be there if I wouldn't have been like, yo, we need to separate. And I don't even know how to say half these words. Yes, Melchizedek. Carlos, what do you want about your battling? Hi, Jacob. Yes, I am butchering the words. I don't know any of them. I think it's interesting how Abram, he probably felt like he wouldn't be there without me, right? And I don't know what if there was any more conversations besides what we see in the text between God and Abram. You would assume there would be. I wonder if Abram, when he heard that Lot got taken by the kings, he may have felt responsible for him being there, for one, because Abram wasn't present to rescue him. Because if they would have been together, they would have had their whole force. That probably wouldn't have happened. And that kind of this is kind of an example of why you need endurance to run the race and finish your purpose, because even when you do things right, like for instance, I think it's kind of widely agreed upon that he needed to separate from Lot. And so he did that. And having done that, he now contends with this event happening where Lot got taken away by the kings. And he has to, in order to remedy that, what he feels he needs to do is rescue his friend. And these kind of setbacks and trials in life are what you need why you need endurance to run the race and why you need courage. Because it would have been scary to do that. And it's crazy to think that God blessed him so much that he has like an army to face these kings. That's wild. And it also goes to show like it's important who you associate with along your journey of accomplishing your purpose. And no, you're not everything you've said. This is wrong. I'm Jewish scholar. There's nothing found. Are they arguing in the chat? Are you guys arguing? Yep. Can you walk towards your vision alone just with God? So keep it moving, Tree says. Okay, I trust you. So it's important to note that it is consequential who you actually let in your circle and who you allow to be blessed by your blessings. And it also, I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if God initially wanted Abram to rescue Lot. I'm sure God used this event to build his character regardless. And when it's a really hard thing to face within yourself when you see friends that are really great, but you guys just aren't on the same frequency, so you have to part because it's the best for both of you. And that's really hard. And it takes a lot of faith to believe that someone else is going to be all right, even without you present there. And it takes a lot of faith to know that you're going to be all right without them not there. Because it's kind of a symbiotic relationship in a sense. When you care for someone, I do believe you feed your confidence because it's a physical display. It is evidence to you that you can help people if you feel called to help people. So when you have a friend that you should have let go a long time ago, or at least reduced how much they are in your life and affecting your life, and reduce the time that you are committing to that relationship, it's hard because their happiness from you helping them, it also feeds your work in a way because it is evidence that you can do what you believe you can do. You can also get trapped in dumping into your friend and helping them a lot and not using your gifts in other areas because they're present. Like, what if they have so many shortcomings and you're really good at doing X, Y, and Z, and you become their therapist by proxy, and you're great at helping them when there's all these other people that you were called to help. And am I Jewish or Christian? What do you think I am? You tell me. And I'm interested. I think you can get caught up in doing good things when you're called to do great things, right? Because neither is bad and it's complicated because you're still making the world a better place by doing good. But when God's called you to do great, it's different. And there's a lot of things you have to endure, and there's a lot of courage you have to build. In the story of Abraham and how he has to rescue his friend from being in the wrong place at a wrong time. I don't know if it really describes how, and forgive me for slaughtering those words, but I don't really pick up here that I know that Sodom and Gomorrah was a place that was dictated as being bad or described as being bad, right? And so you would think all their food, and then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot. He was living in Sodom. It's like I don't really know all the details of Lot living there, so I can't really say that it was a dumb idea, right? Because what if what if he felt called to live there? You know, that's actually interesting. Because you don't know what Abram said to Lot. What if he felt called to live in this bad place to be like the beacon of light there? And yeah, it's it's complicated because he could have still been doing good there, and it's not inconsequential to think that Abram had to do what he had to do to rescue him. And you wonder if, well, do you think Abram, what do you guys think? Do you think it was stupid for Lot to be living where he was? Or do you think that it's understandable to be where he was? And do you think this was best for Abram's development, him rescuing his friend like this? No, it's all meant to be? Huh. I think he may not have known that it was a good place to live. Yeah, I agree. He may not have known. But you would think he'd figure it out, right? Well, I guess he did figure it out. He did find out. And yeah, but also I think that Abram going back and doing this, rescuing his friend, it probably brought to light a lot of things in Abram's life, like within himself and what he knows about himself, right? Like he just rescued his buddy that he told to separate. And he also went through the act of gave the king, gave him a tenth of everything. So he also went through the act of, not accepting anything that his men, I will not accept anything but what my men have eaten and the share that belongs to the men who went with me. So if I back up, he said that I will, I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread to the thong of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. And that's super important. Abram's making sure that his hierarchy of beliefs and his resources reflect that. His actions reflect that. He doesn't want someone else to say that this is the reason Abram has all this stuff. Abram can literally say, God gave me everything. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him. Let me see. To the one who seeks him, it is good. What verses are those? Neither Ben Adam that he should change his mind. He said that he shall not do it or hath spoken. Agreed with scriptures. So I don't know what you're trying to say there, Jacob, but maybe. I can't read that language at all. Yeah, I'm not Jewish. Do I look Jewish? I don't know. Um, this is a great story of how not only leaving your friends in an okay manner, but he is actually rectifying their mistakes that may have not even been mistakes that they knew they were making. And Abram's such a good guy that he went back, used his resources to rescue his friend, and his friend was only there because he was following what God told him to do, which may have made his friend angry earlier. but it also opened up the opportunity for him to go through this great event where he defeated these kings. And then, not only that, but he acts out being generous in a manner where he gives a tenth to some king. And then he acts out his faith by not accepting some things physically, some resources. That way, people of this world can't say that they helped him, and he can stand in the truth that God gave him everything. Because it's different when you believe what you're saying, when you know it is 100% true. If I'm telling someone, hey, I can, well, if I take work, for example, I can go ahead and program. What if I told someone I can write a program in C sharp? It's a programming language, which is not true. I can't. When I lie, it's like if they press me upon that, my rebuttal comes from a source that's really faulty and the ground's shaky. And if people keep poking holes in the foundation that I lay before them or the proposition, they'll eventually find it. And the same thing is true, I think, of your faith. When you stand in the truth and you believe it and walk it out, it increases your courage and endurance in order to face things that are trying to poke holes in your actions, which are your actions are the actual representation of your faith. Faith without works is dead. And so if you know for a fact that God gave me everything, like Abram here, and he doesn't allow that to be manipulated, he doesn't allow that to be poisoned. He keeps that statement true, regardless of if it would make more sense to increase his resources from an earthly standard or not. And that makes him such a great leader, because even if it doesn't make sense to everyone else, it makes sense according to the calling that God has given him. And he's believing in what God told him over what people are telling him. And he is acting out in the truth of his calling and purpose. And that gives you the courage to stand in opposition when people are trying to bombard you with accusations or bombard you with temptation to go outside of your calling or do things that aren't within the discipline and structure that you've set for your life. Standing in the truth creates a completely firm foundation to stand upon, right? Because I think when you're standing on a lie, you don't really know everything about it. But when you stand in truth, you know the aspects of what you're standing on completely. Whereas when you're lying about something, you can't really trust it yourself. And people can sense that, I think. And yeah, what do you guys think about that? God made Abram a nation above all. He did. He called him. It's so crazy how he called him. And he was just like, I'm going to make your name great. And what else did he say? I'm going to make your name great. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That's, I think, one of the craziest things about that is being told that and staying humble. Can you imagine that? Like if you were told that by some supernatural spirit, that is insane. So you're saying God doesn't call everyone. It's very important to understand that. I know it sounds horrible, but it's true. I don't believe that. I don't think that is true. Um, I just don't. I believe our perception of callings, what we qualify as like a great calling down here, is in accordance to how we perceive relation between objects and work and reward. And God sees us as something that he created, right? He's an artist. Let's say I I make a painting and I do paint. I am an artist. Maybe there's a point in the picture, some shading, and this happens a lot, that I work on this little part, like I paint miniatures and stuff. If I work or dioramas and create certain environments or whatnot, there could be a part of that piece that I'm really important, that I'm really, 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 really proud of. And I'll share this with people and they say nothing about it at all. They don't care. They don't care because they didn't make it. They didn't make it. And in the same way, when you look at God being an artist, I'm sure there's things in this world or people in this world that he's given callings to, and he exists outside of space and time and is beyond our reason. So I don't think it's crazy to think that he values things differently than what we perceive, even though we were made in the likeness of God. There has to be similarities, but it's in the text that his love is like all encompassing. And I think just having the belief system that God doesn't call everyone, I can't see the advantage to that at all. It doesn't really make it doesn't make sense to me. Um, and just like an artist can value something in their art and others don't pick up on it, I think the same thing is true of God and people and their callings. Like the work they do here on earth. Like for instance, when you lay down a base layer of paint or primer, no one even sees that. And there's some people that are called here on earth that are laying foundational stuff that 200 years later, people don't even know about them. For instance, Abraham was laying a foundation of making a nation great. And then when you hear about the story of Exodus, God tells Moses, he's like, I'm going to bring you into the promised land. Well, he doesn't, well, Moses himself, but he says, you're going to lead the people out into the promised land that I promised Abram, right? So Abram was like laying this foundation. And if it wasn't for being the origination of this storyline, like I'm sure there's people in this world that's laying the foundation for things that God's called them to, and other people don't even pick up on it or perceive it. But it's just as important. And people may never pick up on it or perceive it. Does that make sense? So, does that make sense? Did anybody pick up on that? What is this? So, God doesn't call everyone. Can I show you in text? Yes. This is what the Lord says. Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I said to you, let my son go. But you have me refused to let him go. They shall come with weeping and with supplications, and will lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way in which they shall not stumble. I am a father to Israel. And I'm going to, so if you say God doesn't call everyone, I would ask, I'm not picking up, okay. Blessed be the Lord your God who is delighted in you, and you sat on the throne, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore, he made you king to do justice and righteousness. Okay. So are you stating that not everyone's called to be king? Is that what you're stating? Because I agree. There are some people that have a different calling than others. I mean, that's obvious. And that is difficult. I will agree that is really difficult for people to process. Some callings, that's what I was trying to speak on in regards to some callings with our perception seem greater than others. And it's interesting to think about God's perspective because he probably looks at all this like a webway network. Everything's all interconnected. And I don't really know. That's a complicated subject to think about. Because, well, it also takes courage and endurance to believe that you can be called to great things. I mean, there's examples in the Bible where God may have had plans for someone, but they didn't follow through. Like Cain's sacrifice being rejected, for instance, is complicated. It's not really like user friendly to talk about, but it's God gave us free will, and it's hard to when you believe in God, you want the best for your brother and sister. And you know that people that may not have the faith that you have or are in the same, no one really is in the same exact place in their walk with God as anybody else. It's all within its own world and context. And when you see someone in the world that has the hand of God on their life, you would say, quote unquote, and some of that is real. Sometimes you could be believing a lie. Sometimes you can create idols out of people like that, which will stop you from getting to that point because, well, that's another topic I'll talk about in a second. But you can start to believe, well, it's actually the same thing. If you see someone is so far ahead of you and that God has gave them a great calling, you'll believe and you can believe that God doesn't have that calling for you or a calling with that sort of magnitude or effect, which I can't say is true or false. I just know that in the Bible, there's stories where a lot of stuff seems to be determined by people's faith. And it seems like that's like the fulcrum, which everything is kind of relied upon. And I kind of wonder if people that don't have quote unquote great callings, I just wonder if the nets and snares of life, they start believing in the things they perceive here rather than having faith in the things that they can't perceive with their earthly senses. Because, man, it's hard to carry stuff out down here. Can anyone else relate to that? It's hard to carry stuff out down here. It clearly states that Jews are closer to God in Old Testament, or Tenka, New Testament Brit had like. So I would say it clearly states in Old Testament, Jews are the chosen people. It also is clearly stated there. Let's take the book of Exodus, for instance. I was actually just listening to a seminar on this yesterday. I just finished it by Jordan Peterson, that Exodus series. And I don't know, are you familiar with Dennis Prager at all? He's a radio guy. He's a Jew, and he believes in the Torah. He thought that he finds it funny that the Gentiles the non-chosen people seem to be brought up in a better light in Exodus than the chosen people because of all the times the Jews reject what God says. They create idols, which, you know, that goes to say something about being a chosen person of God. You're going to have conflict and you're going to mess up. And it's really nice to see that even though like in the Exodus story they messed up so many times and you just like read it, you're like, "Really, dude, again?" Like, how do you do this? Like Moses just went up on the mountain to go talk to God and now you're down here worshiping a gold calf. What are you doing? That's crazy. Like you just seen waters part, like coming out of Egypt. And they get to a point psychologically where they want to go back to Egypt. And yeah, Dennis Prager was talking about how the Gentiles are brought up in a much greater light than God's chosen people there. And so if you're a Jew, I totally understand if you believe that people's callings are greater than others, which, I can't, that's so loaded. I can't get around the fact that Moses' calling was greater than the Jews he was around, or that Paul's calling was greater than some other people he was around in the New Testament. The only thing that I would argue when it comes to everybody and how you would not perceive that as something like God is just, I don't want to say not picking and choosing favorites. That's really loaded. I would say we all have free will and we're all capable of much. It is the substance and acting out of our faith that determines the magnitude of our calling, right? That's what I believe. I do believe that like 100%. It really seems like faith, your aptitude to believe in the overall guiding spirit when you traverse through life and the challenges and difficulties of it. That seems to be the base foundation of everything. Because what you believe about God also reflects what you believe about you. Because God created us, right? And the greater you believe God to be, the greater you believe God can work miracles in and through you in your life and other people's lives. And the greater you believe that his goodness will prevail in this world over all the evil that we see every day. So, for instance, I don't really want to get in the rabbit hole of Exodus, but it's like when Moses goes up and looks at, and he has to cover his face because the glory of God is on him and no one else can handle it. It's like that's kind of when I was just speaking, what I was just saying when it comes to your belief in God is a reflection of your belief in yourself and what God can do through you. I believe that's a perfect picture of that is Moses being so close to God that his glory is like reflecting off of his face and he has to cover it to protect everyone else because their faith like can't handle that is what I look at that as. And that's beautiful. And I believe the same thing about callings with people. I think the more faith you have, the greater God can use you, which seems like a really like, no, duh, Cody, duh. And it's like, but really, like really, a lot of people label New Year's motivation as faith. Right? A lot of people label other people telling you you can do X, Y, and Z and getting pumped up from that as faith. It's different. It's it's different. It's like faith is so multifaceted, and it's the fact that it's beyond our understanding, and that's why it works. Because when the resource is beyond our reason, the things that are within our reason, they can't get entangled in it. Oh, you guys are talking about God changes his mind. But God calls his chosen ones, which are Israel, always will be. God doesn't change his mind. So I believe, okay, so it depends on if you, God does change his mind. Even if you just like read the Torah, I mean, that's a loaded statement because if God is all knowing, then you would think that he knew that he was going to change his mind in the future. But that's right. Because, yeah. Anyway. But I mean, just think about Moses. God wanted to wipe out his people so much, so many times. He was like, dude, these people. And it's so crazy how Moses' journey was like, what am I going to do about these people, God? These people that you called me to lead are just like ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I'd rather be dead. And then God's like, no, just give them a chance. And then later on, they mess up. And then Moses is the one that stands in their stead, right? And he's arguing for them and he's begging for them to be spared. And God does change his mind in the Bible. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. I mean, yeah, I agree. Not PC. I understand that. He is, well, so God does, I mean, I don't know what you want to, it seems like God changes his mind or because God gave us free will. You have to, if God gave us free will, let's just think about that. If God created us and gave us free will, what does that mean? And what does that entail? What does that entail? You have to ask, why did God create us to begin with? Because he wanted a relationship with us. You can't have a relationship with someone if you enforce an act of slavery upon them. If you force a relationship, if you force love, there is no relationship, right? He wanted a relationship. That's why he gave Adam free will. And so, what is free will? It means your actions and your choices are outside of the top beings dictating power, right? Not in a sense that he can't do whatever he wants. He could, but he wants us to have free will. Otherwise, why would he create it like that? And he said that his creation was good afterwards. And so you believe that he didn't create, he created Adam. Well, then I'm not quite sure. But I'm just going to say, if he gave us free will and we're free to choose right and wrong because he wanted a relationship with us, then that must mean that we're able to do stuff that is outside of what he wants us to do. And if you say that God can do anything, why can't he change his mind? Either God can do anything. Why wouldn't God be able to change his mind? He has to be able to do anything if he's going to contend with his creation that has free will, because he wanted a relationship with us, and that's why he gave us free will. In order to have free will, we have to have the ability to change our minds outside of the structure, outside of a structure in which we are enslaved to, right? So we have free will. That means we can choose right and wrong. And God wants us to love him, which is the choice, which is a choice. Love is a choice, right? In that context. And so if God gave us free will and we're able to change our minds, I would say he has to have the ability to change his mind if we believe he's all powerful. Either he has the ability to change his mind or he doesn't. It's not like saying that's so loaded though, isn't it? Because it's like God doesn't sin, but could he? I don't think he is all that is pure and good. That's interesting. I don't want to get into that wormhole today. But I think, no, I'm not getting into that. That's really loaded. I'm not doing that. No. God gives us free will. Okay. So what is free will for us then? I know that he is like the static foundation, like he's static like this, right? He is good, right? But is there not stories? What do you call it when God, okay, so what do you call it when Moses approached God and God was like, I'm going to wipe these people, man. This is garbage. Like this isn't working, man. And Moses like begs him not to, and God doesn't do what he was going to say. What do you label that as? That's what I want to know. What do you label that action as? Jacob, I just want to know what you label that action as. If you don't label that as God changing his mind, then I may agree with you in your definition of God not changing his mind. People get into so many arguments on the internet because their definitions are different. Like I don't even waste time with arguing with people on the internet if for one they don't have an end goal of understanding each other and like increasing both of their knowledge bases to better interface with the world, like an actual conversation and discussion where they're like, I don't care if we end this not agreeing, we can at least gather information from each other to go out into the world and better interact with it, right? And prosper in the way that God wants us to. So if my definition of God changing his mind is different than your definition of God changing his mind, we will never agree and we will argue vehemently without even ever knowing it. And people never take the time to well, I don't want to say never, but it seems like they really don't like to. Okay, so what I'm saying is, what do you call the sequence of events when Moses, who was chosen to lead God's people, he's talking with God, the people rebel, and they do something out of accordance with God's set guidelines. God tells Moses, essentially, I want to wipe these people, like just delete them, and then we'll go on with your seed. You can have children, we'll go into the promised land. And then Moses tells God, no, don't do that. You have to. Moses actually presents it to God in this way. He's like, what will Pharaoh, what will Egypt say? What will everyone else say about the God of the people of Israel? What will they say? What will they say about that? Right? And God then doesn't delete his people. What do you call that? I'm just wondering because I don't care. I don't care if we agree or not. Like I don't. Whatever your understanding is, I hope it like betters your actions in the world. No, that is so. When Moses goes to God, he's like, okay, I can. Yeah, let me Bible gateway this. Hang on. Exodus. Or I can just go here. It's right here. blah, blah, blah. Where's it at? This is good, though. Maybe it's in, is it in Deuteronomy? Actually. This is good. Oh, there it is. Which verse is it? Okay, 32. Oh, okay. So yeah, there's several times where either like I said earlier, God wants to wipe the people, and Moses is like, "Don't do that, dude." And then, because Moses is like defending God's reputation, which is really interesting to think about. And there's also times where Moses didn't initially want to do his calling. He was like, no. And then God has to convince him to stay for the people. Okay, so Exodus 32, verse 9. What does he say? I have seen these people, the Lord said to Moses, and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. But no, Moses sought the favor of the Lord, his God. O Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was the evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? I just want to say, when I was recalling from memory that he was begging for God's reputation, that I wasn't just like full of it and I just read it. So you can't say that I don't know this stuff. I know just a little bit. Again, verse 12. This is after the golden calf moment, right? So this is after God's like, Moses, come up. And man, we're getting into Exodus. This is loaded. But what happens is Aaron is with the people. And while Moses is gone, the people think that Moses deserted him. And Aaron, who was only there because Moses begged for him, basically. God had more faith in Moses than Moses had in himself. Moses is like, I need someone else. So God gives him Aaron. And it's funny how the golden calf was created by Aaron. And so Moses goes up to talk to God. Aaron's back there. And he's like Moses' mouthpiece, kind of. And Moses is gone for so long. And then the people are like, he's deserted us. We need a golden calf. They want something to worship. And so Aaron gathers all the earrings and jewelry and makes it into a calf, and they start worshiping it. Moses sees it, triggered, goes back to God. God's triggered. God's like, yeah, let's just wipe this, dude. Let's just wipe it, man. And just like I said, so I'll just start with verse 9 again. I have seen these people, the Lord said to Moses. They are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, so that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord, his God. O Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? He's saying, dude, if you do this, the Egyptians are going to be like, yo, God just brought them out of Egypt just to kill them. And Moses is like, how is your message going to transcend to all the people in the surrounding areas? What are people going to say about that? And Moses then says, So it says, why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountain and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Moses, verse 13, remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then, verse 14, Exodus chapter 32, verse 14. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of testimony in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets, and so on and so forth. Oh, wait. So I was mistaken, but the calf is after that. So Moses went to stand up for the people about something before the calf. And he goes up and this story is so sad. So Moses, this happens like several times, but that is a depiction of God seemingly changing his mind, right? I'm not in a voice comm right now, but that's interesting you bring up that point because that's in the future and that's coming. The dream of all this that will happen actually, which, yeah, if you haven't subbed, Jacob, I'm just going to say, please sub. I like your viewpoints on things and I like that you actually interact and talk. But I'm totally open to bringing people on like voice comms sometime to actually do that. That is coming in the future. Like I said earlier, I don't know the exact schedule I'm going to enact for this because as you can see, it takes over an hour on average when I'm like really going in the black hole of stuff. And this text, it deserves more than 30 and 45 minutes. I'll just be transparent with you all. I've kind of pulled away from listening to sermons and everything else because of the structured manner in which it is delivered. Because the season that God has me in now, I am like really digging into this and I want to discuss this with people. I don't want to just be spoon-fed it. I don't. There was a time when I needed that. I may need it again. Just like Moses, just like the people, God's people, just like God's people that Moses was chosen to lead, there was times when they needed different things. Sometimes they needed Moses to save their life, right? Sometimes they needed God to convince Moses to lead them. And this text like deserves more than 45 minutes in an hour, I feel like, when I'm digging into it. That's just how my mind works. And I can't shake it. Like I've tried watching sermons for the past like couple weeks and I'm just like, this isn't doing what it used to do for me. Because it's not going as deep. It's not going vertically. It's not like the depth of it isn't as much as I used to be happy with, which is not wrong. There are people where you should keep watching that stuff 100%. If it wasn't for me watching sermons, I would have never ended up doing this. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. But now, I'm just saying, I'm in a season where I like discussing it. And just diving into it, like intellectually, because I'm okay with people having a disagreement with me about it because we can like work together to create a greater understanding. Right? That's the whole point. And you should believe that the Bible is strong enough to hold up on its own, right? whether your interpretation of it is just Old Testament or New Testament, if you believe that to be true, then you should believe that what you believe in is true enough that it can hold up to you discussing it with someone else that doesn't believe your point of view, and it'll still exist in the end. Right? That's what I think. I don't have a wife, but will she read the Bible? Yes. That is not, that's not even like questionable. Yeah. Yep. You should have loving people around you and discuss. I do. I got you right here. I got you, Jacob. You may not even believe in the New Testament because you're a Jew, right? I'm guessing. And I still love you. And I respect, dude, I respect the belief in the Torah. I respect it. Right. And I was saying this in earlier. I had a Muslim come in here. I don't know if he's in here today. Um, but he came in here like guns blazing and saying that your thumbnail title was as hypocritical as the Bible itself. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, I'm not going to have the reaction that he thinks I'm going to have. Because I was like, you know, you believe in the New Testament? Good. Then I assumed you're saved and you believe Jesus Christ died on the cross. That's awesome, man. Like, that moves me. But as I was saying, this Muslim came in here and he was like very aggressive in his manner. And I understand. And it was funny because after he said that, the Bible's hypocritical and my thumbnail title was as hypocritical as the Bible itself, which as an insult, it would get under most people's skin because not only is that insulting your ability to, well, think about it this way. I actually have like the balls enough to get online and to talk about this stuff, which is scary in itself, right? That's scary. And also, if him being a Muslim, which I told him I respect their passion about their religion. I can't not respect it. I respect that at least aspect of it, right? I don't believe their religion to be true. I don't. But I respect their passion for it, and I wish more Christians had that passion for it. And I respect some ritualistic sense of it. Like I was saying, like you can't be able to strap a bomb to yourself and go do catastrophic things to people in the name of your God and not be passionate about what you believe in. It may be terrible, but it says something about their faith. It's not even quotes. That was incorrect. Their faith. It does. In their religion. It does. And so I told him, I was like, I don't blame you for thinking that about Christians. I don't at all. And what was happening there is like he was seeing someone that not only had the balls to get on here and talk about it, but they also, if from a Muslim perspective, a person of that faith, they know that their actions display their faith. So he came into someone's chat who is actually acting out their faith in accordance that is similar to how Muslim acts out their faith. And he came in an aggressive manner. And my response was just, I don't blame you. I really don't. I don't blame you for having that opinion of Christianity, because a lot of what gets shared here on the internet it's usually the most controversial things. It's usually Christians picking each other apart, which I was just sharing a verse with Sharice in here, who is my friends. And yeah, so I can show you some verses in the Quran and hadith which are very racist and evil. So what I would say to you about that, what I will say to you about that is that that statement, I can show you some verses in the Quran and hadith, if that's how you pronounce it, which are very racist and evil. What I would say to you about that is that's the same exact thing that atheists say about the Bible. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that when you say that. And I want you to think about that when you say that statement to others. Just think about that. I'm not saying it's not true. No, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying atheists say that about the Bible too. They do. And so I can go down that rabbit hole. So when you get propositioned like that, when I was telling that Muslim that I don't blame him for Christians for him looking at Christianity like that because, and no offense to you, Jacob, at all, but because of things like that are shared over compassion and like the way that Jesus lived. Jesus did flip tables, but he was strategic about it. And there is a place for rebuking things, obviously. There is a place for that. But how many times have you seen a snippet or a highlight of someone saying a sentence that is them rebuking or them saying something in an aggressive manner or standing up for something while at the same time pointing at something else as being wrong? You seen that snippet and you painted a picture in your head that also painted a picture of not only that person, but of every other single person that you know that walks a similar way that they do, metaphorically. How many times has that happened in your life? And you can't say it hasn't, or else I know you're lying because we all do that. It's just human. I think it's ingrained in us to follow structure, right? I think God created us that way to follow structure. And in order, so our minds like go to that place when we see people do stuff and we relate that to other people that follow that certain sect or belief. And it's complicated. And that Muslim's been back in here, man. And that's so good. Like I told him, I was like, seriously, I don't care if you believe in what I believe. I draw great value from your perspective, like just period. Right? There's a huge disadvantage to you living in the world if you believe you can't learn from someone. Period. Period. I don't care if they're fools. I don't care if they have mental disorders. I don't care. I don't care. You can always learn from other people, either by taking what you do in your life and what your goals are and comparing it to what you see them doing and being like, I don't want to do that because I see what it's doing and I don't think it would be congruent to what God is calling me to do. Or if you don't believe in God, you can apply the same thing and just say that the overall quest or goal of my life is in this season. Or people that you agree with, you can be like, you also can look at their behavior and learn from it in that sense, right? Or like discussions like we're doing here. And Allah's messenger said, you should listen and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian slave whose head looks like a raisin. Yeah, it's like not being able to talk to someone that has different beliefs to you is a complete disadvantage to your existence on this earth, and it's stupid. And it's not helping God at all. I'll tell you that. If you are a Christian and you believe in God and the Bible to be true, you are not doing God any favors. You're supposed to label what is wrong as wrong, true, and you rebuke things, true. You should at least be open and confident enough in the Bible and your belief and God's hand on you to have a discussion with someone that vehemently disagrees with you and believe that you are going to end up okay anyway, and that the text is going to end up okay anyway, that the truth is going to shine through regardless, because the truth does shine through regardless, no matter what, period. Even in your own lives, the lies you tell about yourself. The reason that people have such a big depression and anxiety, which is like the disunion of reality and like what you perceive, that's anxiety, right? And I suffer from it greatly. Like I'm at the point now where I have anxiety attacks and I'll just be around people they don't even know. And I'm just like full-blown anxiety attack. And you should believe that the text is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Anxiety comes from when the truth. So, what I was saying, the truth about yourself, when you get anxious, you're analyzing yourself, right? And that's where all the contention comes from and the depression comes from because you know something to be true and it's peeking through, poking holes in your perception of yourself, which maybe you don't believe I can do X, Y, and Z. Maybe you don't believe God can do X, Y, and Z through me. And it's like the truth will shine through or it will like burn its way through. And it does. I don't think it's a coincidence that like God uses depictions of like holy fire, you know? It's not. And yeah, I have anxiety really bad, man. But it's like it's interesting how even in the story, like Abram, he was told initially that he's going to think about that, dude. If you were told by God that you're going to be this leader of this great nation, the dude, my biggest thing, mind blowing. I don't know if I've ever heard about a pastor talk about this, but the fact that he was humble is insane. If you had God tell you that you're going to be the leader of like all nations and that all this crazy stuff's going to come through you, and I mean talk to you in a sense where you can hear it physically. And then to go interact with other people and still be humble, that is insane. That is insane. That's insane. And you've seen it in that story I just shared when he told that king, he was like, I'm not accepting any gifts from you at all. In fact, I'm giving you a tenth. And because so people know that God gave me everything. To not think of yourself as like, yeah, I deserve for, you know, some resources after just saving everybody. After saving Lot and defeating them kings for you, I deserve that. Wow, and I just thought about that. Abram was that act is the concern of God's reputation among other people through your actions. And Moses changing God's mind, whether you want to, I don't know if you perceive that as changing God's mind or not. I don't know. I don't know what your definition of God changing his mind is, because there's also a train of thought could be if God is all knowing, he knows what his mind's going to be. He knows when he's going to change his mind in the future. So he's not really changing his mind, which honestly, when it comes to those things, I just believe it's like outside of our logic and reason. So there are some things I don't spend much time on thinking about, and maybe I'll devote times to just dive into them myself before I share them. But that's one of those things where unless I'm specifically dedicating time to drill into that, I don't spend much time on it because you get lost there forever. There's not really an answer. It's outside of our reason for an instance. But if your perception of God changing his mind is that, and like, you know, Moses stood up for God's reputation. And that's exactly what Abram was doing through his humility, is standing up for God's reputation, because he probably understood that what people see in him, they're going to correlate to God, which also ties into what that Muslim came in here to do, right? He correlated with what he's seen others do with what I'm doing because we have the same belief system. And so you got to be wise with your words and actions. Like that saying, wise as a serpent, is a thing, right? Like the serpent tricked Eve, you know? And so evil is very, you've seen people that are evil that are very strategic. You have to be just as strategic in doing good as those that perpetuate evil are wise. And that's hard. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? The Quran, Mame. Yeah. So I understand that the Quran says some things that are hard to digest for us. But I would also say this. The Bible says a lot of things that are hard for people to digest, period. So, which part didn't make sense, Jacob? The reputation part or not in the same realm? I'm going to say, all right, so maybe if I back up, let's look at if you're a Christian, which I assume if you believe the New Testament, you are, by definition of the word, as in accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. You believe that you probably have a calling in your life that is specific to you, I would assume. You probably also believe that your mission here on earth is to further the kingdom of God and multiply it by getting those to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. And if that is your mission, if those two things, or even just that one thing, if that one thing is like our ultimate goal, I would say you should ask yourself, what advantage is it for me to have the perception of a certain text or book in the way that I do? And then ask yourself, how am I applying that perception to my actions in a way that will further the kingdom of God? And then, because people can contort that, there's a lot of people that think they're furthering the kingdom of God by just labeling things as this is not what you're supposed to do, which there's some validity to that. But you get a lot of people that rebuke people publicly here on social media. And for every person that they're saving, there's probably like a couple more people they're pissing off, and they're labeling Christians as hypocrites. There's always two sides to a coin. When someone hears something, they're going to hear like an uplifting word. Another person hears it, they're going to think that could never apply to me in this season. That's a lie, and may even get bitter about it. So you have to think about that when you're just like interacting with the world and just like learning and interacting with other people. There's consequences to everything, right? And everything has like a duplicitous aspect to it. So when I don't know, I know when other people of other religions talk to me, I was discussing this in another episode, maybe it was the last one. Oh, okay. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what religious sect you belong to then. Just go ahead and tell me in the chat. I understand. I get what you're saying now. So this will apply to you too. It's like I was talking in a previous episode, I was like, hey, it's hard for me to kind of internalize and to think about how I want others to convert to Christianity and to believe Jesus to be true. How do I word this? It's crazy to think that Muslim got me thinking. It's like he is just as passionate about his religion as maybe I am for mine, and Jacob, you are for yours. And it's like, I would die before I gave up my belief. Literally die. I've almost died before, and I'm not afraid of going back. I should be dead by human hands. And so I went through a situation where I had a 7% chance of living through the night. I was like victim of attempted murder. And so I've been in that space before. So I can confidently say that I would die before I gave up my belief, right? And there are, let's say, Muslims, for example, that would die before they gave up their belief. And I think that's something that a lot of people that believe in something take for granted, that when they're giving their perspective to someone, their belief to someone, sometimes that person is doing the same thing that they're doing, and it'll cause contention if you look at it from a perspective of you're wrong and I'm right, rather than I'm just trying to help you. And because if you look at it from that perspective and like with compassion, even if they disagree with you and maybe they have the perspective of they're just trying to help me because they believe something else, you can both walk away and be like, maybe next time. And you can at least like respect each other for having the passion you do for your beliefs. Because if you take it the other way, the antithesis to that, it just looks terrible for whatever belief you believe in. Just like Abram was displaying humility, which displayed his faith in God, and Moses, when he talked to God about changing his mind, about wiping his people, was worried about what everyone else would think about the God of the Israelites. You know, you're representing your belief, and how you interact with those that don't believe what you believe is a big deal, and how you interact with those who believe what you believe, but not in the way that you think it should. They're not acting in the way that you think it should be acted out. That also matters. That's really lost in a lot of people today. It's like, if you believe God created man, for instance, we're all like from the same palette. We're all works of art from him. And life's really hard. It's so hard. You get bombarded with challenges and evil all the time. It is not, being happy just doesn't happen. It's not like you can't work for it. It is a constant thing. In the Bible, it is stated as like, look to your God. Remember X, Y, and Z. Remember what God's told you. Remember what he's made you to do. Remember his goodness. Because when you look around in the world, it's easy to get lost in it. And whatever you believe, it's like has to be true regardless. And that gets complicated because there's some beliefs out there that seem to instruct you to inflict harm on others. So that's crazy because their perspective is they're doing the right thing by destroying the wrong thing. And that's crazy. There's evil that originates from that. So you have to interact with each other in the world in a way where you hope the best for your brother and sister, but at the same time, have faith that people don't necessarily need you. They can survive without you, and have the faith and humility to enact that. And if you really believe that God is real and will make everything all right, you also have to remember that faith without works is dead. And there's so many depictions of our work here on earth being a sacrifice, our lives being a sacrifice. And there's all the great characters in the Bible. They had some crazy, catastrophic things happen to them. And a lot of the great leaders, they didn't really want to be leaders initially, which made them perfect leaders. It's hard out there. So I would just encourage you all to, as the title of this video said, don't shrink away from the things you're afraid of. Increase your courage, which will increase your endurance. And the whole thing that ties that together is your faith. That's like the underlying foundation, because it exists outside of your like logical reasoning and what you perceive in the world every day. Therefore, the things of the world shouldn't be able to get caught up in it. It's not sourced from here. And yeah, I'm going to end there today, I believe. I think that's a good end point. I will be, what are you guys up to today? What are you peeps up to? I think, Carlos, what are you doing today? You have work off? I think I'm actually going to work. I don't know what I'm going to do in regards to the schedule for this. This was like the longest one ever. And I thank you so much for being here, all of you that were here. I appreciate that you're here and you don't believe in Christianity. If you just sat there and listened to what I say, that says something about your character. If you can sit and listen to someone that doesn't believe in what you believe and still gain knowledge from it, you are wiser than most, I would say. And you are set up to be able to interface with the world on a greater level than most. I would say that. As long as you don't listen in like a state of bitterness and judgmentalness, I applaud you. I do. That's hard. You can promote my channel. I'd love that. Thank you very much. Seriously. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I'd be very grateful of that, actually. This is people that know me. This is fruits of like labor. Like I'm a software developer on the side. Not on the side. That's funny to say. I'm a software developer by trade. And I've actually gone into some thought about this. Paul in the New Testament, he's a character in which a lot of the Bibles in the New Testament in the Bible were written by him. And he's a Gentile. No, he was speaking to the Gentiles. And like that was his task. He wrote a lot of the Bibles. But he brought up the point that he was very proud that he didn't get any money from preaching the gospel. In fact, he went as far to say, I don't want people to pay me for preaching the gospel. He was proud of that. And he was a tent maker on the side, right? Like the main thing we hear about was his preaching of the gospel, but he was a tent maker, which is probably where he got most of his finances from. And I think there's something to that. And I've given thought to it, right? Like whether you believe in God or not, in Jesus, I do. So I believe my existence on this earth is from that source and on purpose to do something. And that's my beliefs. And therefore, to further his kingdom, I basically through like my life. And one of the endeavors is the digital landscape here. And so I thought about how I don't know how I feel about people getting money for preaching the gospel right now. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I think it's interesting how Paul was very proud of that. And he brought up that he was a tent maker. And so I've thought about that when it comes to coming on YouTube and sharing the Bible. And I'm transparent. I'm like, if you don't believe in God and Jesus, that's fine. But I'll just be transparent that my main goal is that you someday would assess that relationship or that structure and look into it, and that ultimately this would further God's kingdom. But at worst case scenario, you at least enter these rooms and come out smarter and can better interface with the world. And I just have to have, because if I believe the Bible to be true, then I would believe that I have the faith that if I come on here and speak as I do, it will further the kingdom, right? And if you're listening to this right now and you don't believe in God, you're like, you can at least respect that I'm that passionate about my beliefs, which is a structure in which I'm following like the spirit that is propelling me forth into the world, right? And so I like how I can come on here, and if I get monetized, I can just gain money through YouTube by promoting their platform, by promoting God. And I don't have to ask anyone else for money because I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to say that I never will, because maybe my understanding of it is wrong. But at this point in time, I'm like, I'm kind of with Paul. I'm like, dude, it'd be pretty sick if you just said that you preach for free for your entire life, or preaching or spreading the gospel, whatever you want to say, teaching. Because that's also another thing. Paul says in the Bible, when he's giving Timothy the charge, which is who he's handing his torch to carry on his tradition after he dies in prison, he's like, preach and teach, right? Which are two. It's interesting. He separates them, separates teaching and preaching. So whether I am teaching or preaching or whatever you want to label it, they are separate things. It's like, I want to be able to hang my hat. It would be sick to hang my hat on the fact that I didn't ask for money to do that, right? I'd like to be Paul in that sense, I think. That's interesting to think about. I also think that's an act of faith, because you're believing that God's going to provide that financial means in another way. Like Paul must have believed that his tent making company would be off the chain. Yeah, I get it. You have to have. Yep, you're right. I get it with a Patreon and whatnot. Like, so I'll bring that up. So actually, in the future, when this gets bigger, it's like I could set up a Patreon where we could have like a meeting or like a Zoom type thing, right? But I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm doing fine financially. The story of how I got into my software development job is crazy, and God blessed me greatly there. Okay. And I do fine financially. And even if I never did this or this never takes off, I'll be fine. My, you know, and, but there's also, I was reading last night that how the marketplace works is people, when they look at a product, the willingness for people to buy the product determines what they perceive as the value of that product. So that's why some people that really don't believe in like selling their product out of goodwill will actually sell their product anyway, because that's how people perceive it, right? Like that's how humans work. And so there's that with it too. I'm just saying, I think it'd be pretty sick to say I did it for free, because yeah, maybe so. Either way, we'll see what happens. I may change my mind on that, which is another thing. I'll always change my mind on things That's one thing about me. I may say something today and come back that I'm wrong. I don't care. I like being wrong. It means I'm gaining understanding and knowledge. And being right, all that does is validate your current understanding. That's sick. Shares in Ford UK. That's sick, man. $15. No. Carla says, I'll be doing monthly financials tomorrow, so I'm going to enjoy today with family. Take son to the movies. Dude, enjoy the movies, man. That's sick. I'm going to be, I think I'm going to work today. I feel like I want to work. I want to code really bad. Dude, this vacation is the longest vacation I've taken in 4 or 5 years. I've had like a week and 2 days off. Yeah. It's not my thing, really, but whatever. Yeah, Jacob. I have my contacts in the description. Reach out to me, man. We can talk. Get a hold of me through any of those avenues. And yeah, I have faith that God will grow this. It's something that's missing in our culture, man, is discussion. People like just receiving a word from A to B, that transference of knowledge. It's like, I don't really want that. I want like a discussion, like actually. I don't want like a live podcast with another person talking and we don't even like read the chat and they have their like host of people read the chat, like their social media team read the chat. I don't want that. It's useless to me and to them. It's useless to them too. It's like it is a much greater use of our time to be able to actually interact with each other and to press us on certain subject material and to discuss things, to like organically manifest something greater, to better interface with the world. I really am. I don't know why God has me in this season, but I just don't. There are people that I'm learning from, obviously, and I just see a total need for like actual discussion happening between people in a more fluent manner. Like I see what goes on. Like my brother streams on Twitch gaming, and I tried that for a little bit, and like I see what goes on there and why it's so successful is because people will get interacted with in the chat, right? And it makes them feel to be a part of a community. And I'm just thinking, like, what if that happened, but like in an intellectual, conversational way? Well, we're actually like getting better and going. You know, that's interesting to think about, right? Because a lot of people I see on here and in other places, it's like they're just kind of presenting their thing, and they're interacting with their audience, but they're not really discussing with them. Does that make sense? And that's what I'm going to be doing here. I don't care if people agree with me. I don't care if I make a fool of myself. I don't care. Because it's just needed, man, and it's better that way for all of us, I think. Travel seminars. Yeah, I'd be down with that. I'm serious, dude. Get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. My contact's in the description. And get a hold of me through, I don't care, Instagram or Facebook. Like, I have thought about doing seminars. Yes. Like, yeah. And actually, it's so weird because, like, the way God places you in life, like, I took speech in college, dude, and I, like, was naturally very good at it. I used to be a lead singer of a death metal band. I was the vocalist, so I played in front of, like, a lot of people. And, like, I've always been in front of, like, people physically, and I'm naturally good at it. Like, I was chosen to do the speech contest in my college, and, dude, it's so crazy. I was able to speak on a topic that I didn't even believe in. Like, that's probably scary for people listening to me, but I was fluent enough at speaking, public speaking, that I could passionately speak on a subject that I didn't even care about really at all. I mean, that's kind of scary to say, but It was about like, not really that I didn't care about it at all, but I was not as passionate about the speech topic as what I was perpetrating to be, I wasn't. It was about, well, we'll get into that some other day. What I'm saying, I have a natural inclination to be able to do that. I don't know why God's built me. Well, you know why God builds you to do things, It's like he gives you talents and you start seeing that in your journey in life and increasing your courage and endurance to face greater obstacles will bring out like the gifts in you, like things you didn't even know were there. And the more you expose yourself to, as your courage gets higher, your fear doesn't really decrease. In some sense it does, maybe, but it's like, it's like I'm still afraid to go talk to girls, even though I can talk to girls. And I do talk to girls, like approaching women. It's like every man is like gets anxious doing that, like a random woman they don't know, or strangers. But doing it, it's like it makes it better the next time and so on and so forth. You get it. Okay, you'll see it. Here we go. I'll just drop this in here. Let me make sure I do this. How about this? One second, man. And I appreciate you very much, man. I'm one of those people that. Let me make sure this is correct. Oh, Carlos. I'm also going to be like having people chat with me like one-on-one on here sometime. But Carlos, you're one of those people I'm thinking about, by the way. We'll come on here because I still have like the River Studio thing. What is it? Riverside FM thing. So I can have people and do like a podcast type thing too. But we'll see. But yeah, here it is. This is my Instagram handle. There's that. How about dude, I agree with you, Jacob. I agree. Like God forms us. That's an interesting topic to think that like we were made in his image and then our interaction with the world corrupts us, which I believe. And that's a loaded topic because it's like, well, what do you do about people that are born in like enslavement? I didn't even start talking about how I'm not going to bring that up. Never mind. All right, I'm getting out of here before I get into another rabbit hole. That is my Instagram handle. Did you see that? Yeah, yes, it is. Yep, that is. I love you all so much. Thank you very much for coming. I'm going to have to figure out when to schedule these. Right now, I could talk to my department and be like, I'm not going to the 9 a.m. meetings, but we'll see. I need to hammer down when I can have like a 2.5 hour time slot. I think that's what I think I need to do. And I want to go live at least 3 days a week. I really want to say 5. Because it's like, you should be deep thinking like this every day. Like I'm coming away from these conversations actually better. I'm not just like teaching or anything, right? It's a symbiotic relationship. What's on next? I'll just be going to the next chapter in Abraham. Obviously, you see that I go into rabbit holes, but I can like connect things and tether things, different subjects. But yeah, I love you. And thank you very, very much. Man, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll be on tomorrow. I'll plan 8 a.m. tomorrow. I'll plan on 8 to 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, somewhere around there ish. And I'm going to talk to my department about the 9 a.m. meetings. And I love you. I hope this was well for you. And yeah, God bless. Thank you all very much. And I will see you tomorrow. Hopefully. Like, subscribe, all that. I hate saying that, but you know. Love you. Have a great rest of your day. Get a hold of me in the contacts description. See you tomorrow morning. Peace.